The Treasury paper refers to the government inquiry in response to the recommendations of the 2001
I'm not sure, I'm not aware of any debates on this issue in Parliament where the government made, the previous government or this government has made a deliberative decision to go down the path that you're saying.
Well,
That's why I'm asking for...
I'm just trying to refer to the quote where it is referred to.
Well, so you're relying on the Treasury?
No, I'm relying on their paper, which refers to the inquiry that was held under the former government, I believe in 2000, in relation to the whether we had a Charities Act and the Charities definition. And after an extensive inquiry, I believe that it was determined, and I thought it was by the government, the then government, not to proceed with this bill. And I'm just looking for the precise reference to it, which I know, or I believe, was inserted into the Treasury submission before this committee.
Would you like to take it on notice?
Yes, thank you. I will. Yeah. Anyway, I believe that it has been looked at least twice before, and again under the not-for-profit inquiry. And it was the subject of some consideration with the Henry Review, and I believe, Senator, that there was not government policy to proceed with that recommendation. But I'm happy to, if I may, take that on notice and provide you with the details of those.
Now, I'm pretty keen to focus on New Zealand, which has got a lot of similarities in terms of their rule of law, where they've come from and where they've got to, and they don't seem to have had any problem moving from the common law approach to an approach where they are actually have a commission, and the commission can make decisions about charities. The evidence we have this morning that the Commission can make a decision, but it's appealable to the High Court. What's your comments on that? Why wouldn't that be a problem? Why would?
Because at the moment, as the bill's currently drafted, that's not the way it is drafted. It would be a law. It would be beyond the public benefit test as currently drafted.
Yeah, but it's not my bill. I'm not proposing the bill.
Yes.
What I'm doing is having a look at it to see what may be an outcome arising from the bill. So I'm asking you to tell me, with your experience of being able to work in the New Zealand under the New Zealand Charities Commission, with an appeal to the High Court if your religious status was challenged, why can't that work here?
Well, it could at the moment. It couldn't work here because the bill's beyond the common law. But the way the bill is drafted...
But I'm not asking about this bill.
The inquiry is an inquiry into the bill.
Yes, but...
You're asking me a question about... It's true. If it's amended so you could have something that is reviewable by the courts and challengeable by the High Court, no problem. I suppose what I would draw your attention to is the anti-avoidance provisions contained in Part 4A of the Income Tax Assessment Act. The anti-avoidance provisions are somewhat similar. It's an objective set of criteria, subjectively determined and administered, which has caused a lot of angst, a huge amount of money, and a lot of tax cases. I don't know that charities, particularly smaller charities and religions, would welcome a lot of litigation, and I'm sure that this bill will lead to a lot of litigation.
So why, and I'm not sure that, Ms McBride, you want to answer this, but because it's a policy issue, it's distinct from a legal issue. Is it appropriate if the Australian public, and it's not just for Scientologists, but for any charity, that if the Australian public are putting public funds into a charity, that there should be an identifiable benefit arising from the aims and activities of that entity? Is that appropriate?
I think so, yes, Senator.
Okay. And the benefit must be balanced against any detriment or harm. What's the problem there?
I think, Senator, is how do you determine that as a subjective means?
Well, don't you determine it the same way they do in New Zealand, where the Charities Commission makes a determination and it's appellable to the High Court? Why can't you do that?
Can I interject and say, isn't that like the example I gave you? Views change as to what's detrimental or harmful.
So the High Court, so do the judges in the High Court. I mean,
well, that's true.
That's true.
The cost of a court case in the High Court is huge.
but I mean, law changes over the years. This seems to me to be one of the laws that seems to be stuck in time. And laws change as society changes.
Well,
and if we need to change those laws, then we should look at them, surely.
I don't think anybody suggested that the law should be looked at. As I said, I think it's been looked at on at least one, to my knowledge, two, possibly three previous occasions. And far greater minds than mine decided it's like a can of worms. That's a recipe for disaster. Now, you may say that's no reason for not trying to do something about it, but there is no more emotive or emotional issue than religion.
Ms McBride, what were the legal disasters in New Zealand arising from their move to a Charities Commission? What were the legal disasters?
I don't know.
Well, why are you using language like that?
Because I practice in taxation. I see all the time problems that arise from...
Well, tell me about New Zealand then. Because
efforts to codify the common law are fraught with difficulty, and you only have to look at our current tax legislation to see that.
Ms McBride, we had specific evidence from New Zealand. If you're going to make these comments, you surely should make specific references, because it's not very helpful to the committee just to be generalising.
Well, I'm not here as a New Zealand tax expert, and I didn't
Well, then
hear...
perhaps you shouldn't have made the comments about New Zealand, with respect.
Well, maybe if you're not an expert in New Zealand, Mr Ferriss is an officer of a registered body in New Zealand. Maybe we should be asking him these questions, because he has got the responsibility as an officer of a company in New Zealand, a registered organisation in New Zealand, to understand how it operates. So I'm happy to take these questions up with Mr Ferriss. Tell me what disasters have befallen the Church of Scientology in New Zealand arising from the move to the Charities Commission, the disasters that Ms McBride has spoke about.
As I said earlier, we've had no disasters from the Charities Commission enacting in 2006. I wasn't aware, I must say, that they had a test of harm. I wasn't aware of that. I've read some of their material. I don't have it with me, but I know that when they're assessing a religious group, they see that a religious group, the advancement of religion is for the public benefit, and they gave one example of that where a funeral service might be being conducted and members of the public are at that funeral service, and they, by being present, by listening to those prayers and the service itself, that they could feel some spiritual gain or benefit from just being present as something religious. And so they call that a public benefit. That's probably what I've read.
Why, given that the estimate, and I'll be asking Treasury about this estimate, the the Productivity Commission estimate is that somewhere between $1 billion and maybe $8 billion of public money goes to charities. Do you accept that if you receive a benefit from public money that you should be very open, that you should be accountable, and that you should act in the public interest as a charity?